Welcome, friends, it's the Movie Film Podcast. Movie Film Podcast, enjoy the show. Zachy and Brian are talking about movies. Movie Film Podcast on the radio.
Welcome to Movie Film. It's episode 310, brought to you by Mr. Boy Productions. I'm Zachy Hassan. I'm here with Brian Hall.
Hey, how's it going, Zachy?
Hey, man.
How you doing, man? Happy Valentine's Day, by the way.
I know. This is how we spend our Valentine's Day.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure this will probably be released today, so happy Valentine's Day to everyone listening as well, from us to you.
All out in the world, yes.
Yeah.
And for those of you listening far into the future, happy Valentine's Day forever.
Yes. Actually, I'm picturing like 50 years from now when it looks like post-nuclear war Terminator world, and someone's like huddled around like, I found this, the archive of, broadcasts, and it's just us. We're like, happy Valentine's Day, everyone, forever.
That's right.
Person eating dog food out of a can, like, oh.
We're happy that you chose us.
Yes. And good luck out there against the machines.
We're rooting for you.
Yeah.
we're pulling for you. What's new? What's interesting?
Well, we haven't. I think we did 2 commentaries in a row, so I've got a little backlog of things I want to mention. One, I'll just say very briefly. Occasionally, I listen to this podcast called Blank Check.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever listened to it, but it's really good. And basically, these guys go through directors' filmographies. So the whole conceit of the thing is, they made one movie. A director made a movie that was so undeniable and successful that they got a blank check for the rest of their career. And what did they do with it? Let's look at the rest of their films.
Sure.
So anyway, currently they're going through early Spielberg.
Ah, okay.
And I thought I would take that as an opportunity to not only go along with them, but to start filling in some of the gaps that I have with Steven Spielberg. So, for instance, I've never seen The Color Purple. And
Okay.
I've seen Empire of the Sun, but I barely remember it. I think maybe I saw Always on TV once. So I was like, oh, this is great. I'm going to actually fill in my gaps and complete, the Spielberg filmography for myself. But anyway, so they began with Duel, and then they did Sugarland Express, which I had only seen once and didn't remember very well. So I watched that. And when was the last, or have you seen Sugarland Express, I guess?
I saw it probably 99.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I saw it in film school, but I don't remember it. I just don't.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't have a lot to say about it other than it's pretty incredible. I mean, and what I mean by that is, I mean, the story itself is pretty simple, and it's based on a true story about this couple that hijack a cop car, and they want to go get their son out of foster care. And as you can imagine, things don't go well. But it is, I was watching it with my jaw open,
really?
Knowing that Spielberg is in his early 20s, and this is one of the most confident visual films I've watched in a very, very long time. Like, he was pretty much fully formed out of the gate. And I really enjoyed watching this. The film itself is enjoyable, but just visually, I mean, you could almost watch it with the sound off, and it would make an amazing silent film. So I just wanted to bring that up. I thought that was, for people who enjoy Spielberg's movies, haven't seen Sugarland Express, I think it's worth checking out.
Okay.
But what I learned through that podcast was that one of the big reasons Spielberg was interested in that story wasn't necessarily about just the 2 lead characters and their journey. It was about what cropped up around them, which was this hubbub of police and media and, feelings about, well, we want them to get their kids back. I don't want them to get their kids back. Like, just the sentiment surrounding these people, which reminded me of a documentary I just watched on Netflix.
Hey, look at this! Look at the segue on Brad here.
American Manhunt, O.J. Simpson. So I was driving down the 405, as one does, and I saw this billboard where it was just a picture of the 405 with the white Bronco driving down it, and it said Netflix, and I was like, there's a new one? Zachy, Lord help me. If there's a new O.J. Simpson's documentary, I will watch it. Are you like this? I'm just curious.
Am I fascinated by the OJ case?
Yeah, like still to this day. I mean, do you find yourself drawn to it?
Well, yes and no. I am in the sense that it's something that very much reminds me of a specific era. But I think for me, like when it was happening, I was like in high school, and I was like weirdly obsessed with the OJ case, like every
Yeah.
detail of it.
Yeah.
So I feel like I kind of got it all like the first time.
That totally makes sense. I don't know what
Like
it is.
I know to this day I know Dennis Fung, the
Yes.
the criminologist or whatever, who like Barry Sheck was like, how about that, Mr. Fung? Like, why do I know that? Why do I need to know that,
Wow,
Brian?
great memory. But you know, and that's what it is. I mean, that's the thing. It involves two people who were brutally murdered. It's not a pleasant story, but it does grow well beyond that into this
Oh yeah.
crazy cultural thing and
Yep.
this wild cast of characters. And like you said, I mean, it really does take me back to a period of time. Just in terms of, I mean, I remember who I was in that moment, but also I just what the media was like and what television was like, and the fact that the world could be all, captivated together by this one thing. I don't know. There's something about that I'm just endlessly drawn to. And so anyway, I watched it. It's a 4-part documentary on Netflix, and I'd say it's very good. I mean, for people who are interested in it, I think they will find something new. I don't know if I'd say new, but I think they will still find things interesting about it. Actually, well, I will say new, because I think the definitive document on the whole OJ case is probably the documentary OJ Made in America.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's 8 or
excellent.
10 hours long. It won Best Documentary, even though it's a 10-hour long movie.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
It is, but it is very, very, very good. And
Yes.
this is condensed, but it also is very comprehensive. I mean, there's a lot of interviews with chief people involved, investigators, lawyers, witnesses. And it also does this interesting thing where it'll show an investigator will say, oh yeah, we found this, pretty damning evidence. And then on the screen, it'll say, not submitted for trial. Or there'll be a witness who's like, oh, I saw OJ at 10:50 p.m. and he drove over a median in the road in his white Bronco, and I knew it was him because it's OJ Simpson, the guy from Naked Gun movies. And then it'll say she was not included as a witness in the trial. And you're like, whoa. And along the way, you occasionally learn why. I mean, just to spoil one thing, for her, she went and told her story to like a tabloid show. She got paid to tell that story because she needed money, and then she was a compromised witness for the actual trial. So,
interesting.
But it does a very good job, I think, and it also does a good job. I mean, look, hot take, OJ did it, right? And
What?
and the documentary makes it very clear. That's my opinion. I think the documentary makes it very clear, but I think it also does a very good job of showing why you could look at the whole case and feel like it was tainted.
Right.
And for someone, speaking about myself, who feels so confident about understanding what happened, you do look at it and you see all the nefarious people involved in the LAPD and some hinky evidence, and you're like, yeah, that doesn't look good. That doesn't look good. I think the evidence is overwhelming, but there's some like messed up stuff going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was riveted. I tore through this thing, and I just thought I'd mention it for anyone else who's interested.
For all these the OJ files in the audience.
Yeah, people who remain fascinated by
it. I'm fascinated by how much time we have spent during the life of this show discussing the OJ case. That itself is fascinating.
It's probably half my fault. But again, if they continue putting out media, I'll probably watch it.
No, I think that the documentary OJ Made in America is excellent, and I think the miniseries, the dramatized miniseries, is also quite good.
Oh yeah, that was very good.
People versus OJ Simpson.
People versus OJ Simpson. Yeah, Cuba Gooding Jr. and yeah, that was very good. 2 more things I want to mention because I think they're worth it. I saw a movie called Presence. Have you heard of this movie?
I have.
Okay, so at my theater, I was seeing posters for this, and I had not seen a trailer. I had not read anything about it. It just said Presence, sort of feels like a ghost story, directed by Steven Soderbergh and written by David Koepp,
Yeah.
right? Jurassic Park, Panic Room. And I was like, well, that sounds interesting. How come I don't know anything about this? So I went into a friend and I saw it, went in knowing nothing about this movie. And it's very interesting. I would ultimately recommend it if what I'm about to say sounds interesting to you, because I think it succeeds as a really cool experiment, a director who's allowed to play with form a little bit and try something new. And I think he pulls off something interesting. The movie as a whole took me some time to figure out how I felt about it.
Okay.
Basically, the movie starts off in a POV shot, and you're going through an empty house, and then you see a family come in, and it looks like they're about to move in. And the thing is it never moves away from the POV. You are a ghost.
Okay.
So the entire movie is seen from the POV of this ghost that lives in this house, observing this family. And then, things happen. Some people in their family, can't be trusted or shouldn't be trusted. And it becomes, how does the ghost get involved? Who is the ghost? And what's interesting about it is this isn't like a conventional sort of four quadrant-y sort of movie. Like, it feels very indie, sort of like a slow burn art house Sixth Sense, I suppose. And even when it was over, I was so curious. I was reading everything about it, and I saw it had like an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes and a C+ cinema score. And I was like, yeah, that feels about right. Like, this is kind of 50-50 if people are going to be on board with this. And I don't want to say too much, because I mean, the whole movie is what's going on and where's this all headed. And I think what took me a while why it took me a while to get on board with this movie was its tempo is weird, because
Interesting.
like, there's a character who's involved in something that maybe we're learning, oh, she might be in something illegal. But typically in a movie, then you would have a close up of her with her laptop and her eyes kind of darting, hoping no one's going to catch what she's doing. And then maybe the camera whips around and someone's walking through the door and she shuts her laptop shut. Like, that's the typical visual language of a film. But here, because we're literally standing in a corner of a room, observing, it's a little more awkward to watch these people behave in real time with this kind of behavior. So it can almost feel a little bit slower and maybe even more stagier, and kind of clumsy and stiff and whatever.
So is it very different movies, but does it feel like here, kind of, where it's sort of like a visual experiment by the filmmaker that we're moving through, and we sort of have to adapt to that?
Yeah. I think here, I mean, Zemeckis is brilliant at blocking. He's up there, I think, with Spielberg in terms of knowing how to block a scene to make it dynamic. I mean, think of Marty and Doc, when Doc is giving pages of exposition, but he's running up to the camera and looking around and then turning around, and then Marty runs up and like, what was he looking at? And then he he knows how to make it very dynamic. And he does that, I think, also in here to a degree. This took me a minute. And even when I was walking out and it was all concluded, I wasn't sure what I thought about it. Wow. And it was when I started really processing it later, I think I came to appreciate it.
Okay.
And my friend, he actually didn't understand the ending. And I was like, I think this is what happened. And I went on Wikipedia to look up and to make sure. And I even saw online some people weren't sure about the ending. So I think if people are looking for something a little avant-garde and to see Steven Soderbergh playing around a little bit, and it's under 90 minutes, so it's not a huge investment, but if a unique experiment of a ghost story sounds intriguing to you, I think it's worth checking out. But for people who want something a little more straightforward, I think it might be a little frustrating.
Okay.
There was a moment, though, I will spoil just a little bit. They get a medium to come to the house to look around. And because we are the ghost, we're, our POV, it was really cool because the medium comes in and immediately feels something. And then when she's talking to the homeowners, she keeps looking over at you. like subtly, and then
Yeah.
like looking back at the homeowners, like she knows you're there.
Wow.
And that was, I mean, chef's kiss. You know what I mean? Like playing with if as long as you're going to be doing this the whole movie,
Yeah.
getting to play with little moments like that was really fun. So
Okay, that sounds interesting.
yeah. And then lastly, I guess the last month was my month of going to the movies, not knowing what I was getting into, but just I had the Regal Unlimited, like let's give it a shot, right? So my friend and I went and saw this movie called Companion.
Oh, this is with Jack Quaid.
Yes. I guess this is a hard one to talk about because I'll read the IMDb summary. It says, a weekend getaway with friends at a remote cabin turns into chaos after it's revealed that one of the guests is not what they seem.
Okay.
And it's so hard to talk about this because the trailer gives away a certain amount of the story. But as I was watching it, basically, I'll give you like the first 2 minutes of the movie. It begins with a woman in a grocery store shopping. And she sees this handsome guy and he's looking at oranges. And she's giving this narration saying, you know, do you ever have that moment in your life where you're just not sure, you feel like sort of directionless and you're not sure what like the meaning of it is and who you want to be or who you could be, you know, but then every now and then something will happen that gives you that sense of purpose, that meaning, that freedom or whatever. Mm-hmm. She goes, I had that twice in my life. The day I met Jack and the day that I killed him. And then the movie just starts. Mm-hmm. And I was like, if I was in an office reading screenplays and I read that first page, I'm reading the whole thing. I have to know what this is, right? And so then basically they, you know, the two are dating, they go to this cabin and they're staying with some friends and people there aren't very nice to her. And you're sort of like, why? And there's a reason. And if you watch the trailer, you'll know. But it's so, I was just thinking, man, I wish I hadn't seen a trailer for this. Just to not know. Anyway, turns out there is a bit of a twist, but that's just in the first act. That's the movie. And it becomes, how can this woman who these people are trying to, they are against, how can she get away from them? Mm-hmm. And man, I'm being so vague and I don't want to be so vague, but I will say this. It's advertised as a horror film. I think it's more of a thriller with horror elements. Okay. There's maybe like one or two kind of gross moments that you could kind of turn your head if you wanted. So for people who are afraid of that, but I really like this movie. This is probably my favorite movie of the year so far.
Really?
Yeah. Okay. I kept thinking about the script. It's just so like, it's a page turner. And, and once there's the reveal, what the screenwriter does it so clever is, what are all the possibilities? How can I play with this conceit? Yeah. Right. So, I mean, that's the thing. We talk about that sometimes when you have a movie where someone has a certain sort of power. You don't want to just have them exist with that power and continue to tell a story that anyone else could exist in. How can I continue to play with that thing that is unique to this story and come up with clever ways for our hero to get into danger, but for her to use strengths that only this character in this film has in unique ways that I didn't see coming. And so it's basically her trying to get away from these people. There's a bit of a sci-fi element to it, I guess I'll say. I don't know. I'd say watch the trailer if you want to know a little bit more. Otherwise, if you want to go in and be completely surprised by it, I think that would be a lot of fun. Yeah, I really enjoyed Companion a lot. Like I said, I think this might be my favorite movie of the year so far. And it's you know, it's pulpy, it's sci-fi, it's fun. It's not like a, you know, it's not going to win an Oscar or anything.
Sure. But at what it's doing, it's very effective.
Really fun genre movie.
Sounds like both of these, Presence and Companion.
Yeah. I think Companion will be more accessible to more people. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, if you ever watch it, I would really love to talk about it. Maybe when it starts streaming or something, we could do like a spoiler talk about it. Cause this was just it just kind of, I don't know. It just ignited my imagination a little bit. I haven't felt that in a while. So yeah.
It does feel like Jack Quaid is all over the place lately.
Yeah. And he has that other movie coming up, Novocaine, I think
Novocaine, which looks not bad.
It looks, like a sort of a fresh take. I mean, well, I guess we could say we're not going to talk about it, I don't think, but the Ke Huy Quan movie, Love Hurts, which came out, and there seems to be this genre of the everyman
Yeah.
who suddenly realizes he's John Wick,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the Novocaine, so with Love Hurts, I was sort of like, I really am rooting for Ke Huy Quan, and I don't know that this movie is going to do very well, or maybe it already came out.
It did.
But I see, and I don't want people to take the wrong lesson from this. Like, we want him, like we love the guy, we want him in good movies, but that movie felt a little tired at the moment.
What I'm hearing is he's the best thing in it, which is gratifying, but I don't think the industry looks at things that way, unfortunately.
I know. But see, but then you look at him in Everything Everywhere All at Once. If that hadn't happened, I mean, he's perfect for that movie, and he really is allowed to shine in that movie. What he does shines in that film, right? So hopefully there's something else like that up ahead for him. But Novocaine looks like that everyman in a John Wick movie again, except the twist is that he can't feel pain.
Right. So it's like Limitless, but with your body as opposed to your brain.
Yeah, which looks like enough for me to go, oh, well, that feels a little fresher.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, I saw a couple things. I suppose this is not particularly fresh in that it's the sequel to a 40-year-old franchise, but the final episodes of Cobra Kai I saw.
Oh man, okay. I need to watch this. I will watch this, and I'm dying to know what you thought of it as a whole now that it's wrapped up.
Right. So yeah, I think you fell off, right? Like you watched the first season and then
and I remember enjoying it.
Yeah.
But you just get distracted, and then I didn't have the pull bringing me back.
Well, plus you're one of those cats that like once a band like gets too popular, you're like, I liked them before they sold it. Like I liked Cobra Kai when it was on YouTube Red. And now
right.
You're like, whatever, you newbies,
Right.
But of course, it became a phenomenon after jumping onto Netflix, and that's where it spent the majority of the past 6 seasons. So the final batch of episodes just dropped just in time for the new Karate Kid movie that's coming out in May. And this is it's a solid wrap up to this show. Like that's it. I honestly, if you love the whole Karate Kid ethos, you will be very satisfied with how it ends.
Okay, great.
Like I don't think anything happens that's particularly shocking. I think it goes down a path that you can figure out how things are going to go, but that's the satisfaction of it, of seeing it go the way you want it to go.
Right. Sure.
And I'm going to say, I think Cobra Kai may be the best legacy sequel we've ever gotten.
Really?
Just in terms of doing what you have to do to honor the past while also nurturing a future. Like it hit all of it. Maybe Creed and Cobra Kai.
Yeah, Creed was good. Yeah,
right. Where it's like it's a trick because you have to sort of feed two mouths, And I look at what Cobra Kai achieved. I think that what's very satisfying to me, and I've said satisfying a bunch of times, sorry, but it's just satisfying, Brian. What can I say? Yeah. If something's satisfying, I'm going to say it is. God damn it!
Yeah, 2 thumbs up. It gets 4 satisfyings,
and that's right.
Yeah.
It's really Johnny's story, and that's what you sort of realize in all of it. Like Daniel is essential, but that's kind of the key thing. Is this is called Cobra Kai, and that's the arc, right? Because with Daniel, he's sort of boxed in a little bit in terms of our expectations of the character.
Sure. Right?
Like Daniel's Daniel, and he's going to Daniel's not going to murder somebody or something. You know what I mean? Like he's
yeah.
Right. So it's sad. I was about to say satisfying. I stopped myself. It's happy making. No, it's just good to see Daniel, and he's in character, and where he's at now feels like a natural progression, and that's fun to see. I think with Johnny,
because it's. I'm sorry, I was just going to say, because when you do these legacy sequels, you have to give people that previously had happy endings new problems, and that can sometimes be unsatisfying, right? It's like we don't want to see these people behave in ways that don't feel correct.
Yeah.
For the sake of extending a story that doesn't need extending. So you're saying that this avoids that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. However, with Johnny, right? Other than, he gets kicked in the face. He says, "You're all right, LaRusso," and then he gets beaten up by John Kreese. We don't know that much about him.
Yeah.
And so there was more room for him to grow and more directions for his character to go. And that's like, man, William Zabka, he clutched onto this character and he made a meal out of everything he was given to do,
Yeah.
And I think for me, the show really hinges on it's like a rom-com in a weird way. You're like, will they, won't they be friends?
That sounds really interesting to me.
Right? And you're like, man, I just want these two crazy kids to work it out.
Yeah.
And that's the journey. So I watched it. I reviewed this final season for the Wrap, so I've been keeping up with it by virtue of that. But my kids have been watching it, like specifically Idris, my third kid. He's been watching it completely separate, just on his own. And for him, it works on that whole other level, and that's where it really clicked for me. I'm like, this is a thing. And now he's going back and watching the movies.
Oh, interesting. So this was his entry point.
Yeah, like he was aware of the movies, but he hadn't seen them.
Oh wow, okay.
And so that's the neat thing because the television show, it treats the Karate Kid trilogy like the sacred text, and it doesn't try to ignore any of it. It tries to repurpose it in ways that make you appreciate it. So Karate Kid 3, not the best movie, but it's essential for the Cobra Kai mythology.
Okay.
So it makes you appreciate that movie anew, And they found ways of bringing in, Chosen from the second movie, and Mike Barnes, the opponent from the third movie. They even brought back, Allie, Elizabeth Shue.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, I think other than Hilary Swank as the next Karate Kid, I think pretty much everybody from those movies showed up.
Wow. Okay.
And I love that. In the first movie, the character Bobby, who he's the one who remember, Daniel, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
He's a priest now.
I love that.
And it really values the entirety of the mythology in ways that just makes you appreciate it all. So I'm such a big fan of this show. Like, I'm like, this show's going to be watched for generations, just like those movies.
That's so fantastic. That's funny because the moment you say there, where that could have been an inflection point in his life,
exactly,
about mercy and forgiveness, and like, oh, that's just all right. I got to watch this. Well, I have a question for you. So before I watched Captain America yesterday, there was a trailer for a Karate Kid movie.
Yeah,
right,
Karate Kid Legends.
Yeah. So you're saying this series does feel like it has an ending.
Yes.
We don't need this movie. The movie's not the ending to this series necessarily.
Correct. The movie is a new, something new in the universe.
Okay.
Yeah. So the movie just kind of brushes over the fact that the 2010 movie is actually a remake and says, no, it's just a weirdly similar set of events that happened.
Right.
And they retcon it that Jackie Chan's character, Mr. Han, knew Mr. Miyagi somehow. And I'm like, you know what? It's all good. It's
sure.
Fine. I mean, one can choose to be very cynical as far as this is, Sony trying to keep the franchise going.
Mm-hmm.
But I choose not to be a cynical person. I'm like, you know what? Ralph Macchio had no reason to do this movie, and he chose to pop up in there.
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good to me. Exactly.
I look for. I'm happy I have this waiting for me.
Yeah, you have a good show waiting for you.
Yeah.
Here's a couple other things I saw. Very pleasant surprises. You may recall last month I mentioned the movie Den of Thieves 2, the new Gerard Butler joint, and I was like, I'm in the mood for this, like just something in this vein, in this lane. And so I revisited the movie Greenland, starring Gerard Butler, which I saw several years ago. I did not remember it very well, and then I watched the movie Plane.
Oh, I've been meaning to watch that. The trailer, I so admired
Yeah.
The fact that they made a movie called Plane that I felt like I owed it to them to watch it.
Man, make it a double feature. You got
Really?
2 very solid movies waiting for you.
I can't remember because we haven't talked about this stuff in so long. I watched Den of Thieves 1. Did I tell you that?
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Loved it.
Yeah. It's good, right?
Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah.
It's like a pulpier Heat.
Exactly. Yeah. And the second one does something very different.
Really? Okay. Because I liked one, and because you had mentioned it, I was gonna go to the theater to watch it, but it's already gone.
Yeah. I would say when you do watch it, it's telling a different story, but if you like the first one, I suspect you like the second one.
Okay. Sorry. I want to hear about these.
So Greenland, it's an end of the world movie. It's you got this asteroid that's gonna wipe everything out, but it's told through the perspective of just this one family. It's Gerard Butler, Morena Baccarin is his wife, and they have a son. And I don't know, man. It's a low risk, low reward kind of movie. I mean, it's not going to change your life, but I think it tells the story very well. And Gerard Butler is just really good at playing this type of character. There's just something about the guy, that's very watchable.
Yeah.
Right. I sat there. I watched it with my daughter. She's 7, going on 8, and she was transfixed. She's telling her mom all about, you got to watch this. Right?
Does that freak her out? The idea of the end of the world?
No, I think it weirdly makes her happy because she kind of her head tilts to one side. She's like, imagine everything ending, everything you ever knew, gone like this, and she snaps her fingers as she stares off into the distance.
Right, or blows out a candle or something.
Yeah, this is unnerving. I don't know if it does, but like, I think she's at that. She's old enough now where she can process this stuff as just stories, and that's kind of fun,
See, that's kind of interesting because I think you do show your kids enough media that maybe they now have something formed at an early age about beginning, middle, end. That's a story. Here's the credits. Where I remember as a kid, certain things I would watch and I would think, oh man, that's possible. Or like RoboCop or something, being like, people do that to each other, like ripping people apart with bullets and stuff.
There's that much blood in the body.
Exactly.
No, so that was very, very good. And then, like I said, a couple of days later, I was like, I'm gonna check this out, and I've had this sitting in my Voodoo library for a while, and it's just Gerard Butler plays a airline pilot, and they're going through a storm. They have they're hit by lightning. They have a power outage. They land somewhere in like an island in the Philippines that's just overrun by pirates basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just Gerard Butler and Mike Coulter, who was Luke Cage in the Disney the Netflix Marvel shows, which are now on Disney Plus.
Okay.
It's just them two. They have to stop. They have to protect like the passengers on this airplane. That's the movie. I mean, it's again, it's not life altering, but it's very good at like you will like this. I know you'll like it.
Okay. Yeah.
It's very good at being that type of movie. I don't think it's exploitative. I think the emotions feel genuine. I think the execution is, it pulls you in. I think it's. I say this a lot. I'm like, I wish there was more room for movies like this, right? Because both of these did okay,
right,
relative to their budget and whatever. But it's like I feel like Gerard Butler has this lane all to himself, and I'm like, people want this type of thing.
Yeah.
People want to go to the theater and just escape for a couple hours of something like this.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, years ago, I watched every Liam Neeson movie that came out.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just started you could feel the gas running out of the tank.
Yeah.
And so it was sad. It was sad for me. Then when the first one came out, that I was like, not this time. It was a sad feeling for me. But yeah, I feel like that's kind of what Butler's doing here. Like that, it's not like a Christopher Nolan action film or something, but it's just like, it's a completely, if you're willing to go there, like there's a lot of fun to be had. There's a lot of skill in the action. And
I think it helps that there is sort of like a caricature of the type of character Gerard Butler plays, right? Which is kind of something in the Liam Neeson vein, right? And it's really not that. Like, he's playing characters.
Totally.
And And that's like you just watch Den of Thieves, and you're like, no, this is a guy. There's a real, you know, he's not just the guy who walks into a situation and just beating the shit out of people. That isn't this, but that is the general impression if you're talking about the cinema of Gerard Butler.
Yeah, like in Den of Thieves, there's a scene where he's not a very always likable guy.
No,
he's
but he's
very,
playing a character.
Yeah, he's very gray, and so I appreciated that the movie took the time to have that scene where he goes to sign those divorce papers.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that? And he's like
Mm-hmm.
walking to this room full of people that are a little uncomfortable that he's there, and he is reveling in how uncomfortable they are.
Yeah,
I even thought like, oh, you don't even need this scene, but I love it. This is about him. This isn't even about like the plot. This is making me understand him more.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And with Den of Thieves, it's definitely Gerard Butler struggling his way through an American accent.
Yes.
Good thing about both Greenland and Plane is he's just doing his Scottish accent. And I'm like,
there you go.
Just more of that, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't give this guy more than he can carry. Yeah.
By the way, and if anyone needs one more hook to watch Den of Thieves, the Gerard Butler, his character is introduced walking onto a crime scene. And he's basically like, oh, man, I'm hungry. And then there's a box of donuts with blood on the box. And he just opens the top of the lid and pulls a donut out and takes a bite.
So funny.
You're like, got it. I know who this guy is.
in my art of film class, I always tell my students, I'm like, pay attention to the intro scene for your characters.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the thing that's the thing that they've put the most thought into. Like, what's the first impression we want you to have?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's like the example that I should have cited. That's like a perfect example because you know everything you need to about him. You know?
Yeah, it's good.
Here's another one. I don't even know if this is on your radar, Brian, but there is a new version of The Count of Monte Cristo that just came to Vudu. It was in theaters last year. This is a French production.
Zachy, I've seen this.
Okay.
And when you put it on here, I am dying to know what you thought.
Oh my God. Can I tell you something? Probably one of the best movies I've seen for this past year.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a fire when the fires were going on here and I had to get out of town. I went to the movies and saw this because it was playing there. And so I never imagined we'd be able to talk about this. So I want to hear everything.
Yeah, and I've mentioned before, I'm a big fan of the Kevin Reynolds one from 2002, right, starring Jim Caviezel, which I think is very good. This one is much truer to the book, and I think as a result, I think it's a superior version to that 2002 movie, because it's close to 3 hours long, so really there's more room for the story to breathe. The lead actor Pierre Ninet is terrific, man. He's got these eyes, these like expressive eyes that convey so much. And then, of course, it's an old story. So, very broad overview. He's a sailor who's accused of a crime that he didn't commit, and he's betrayed by people who benefit from him sort of just being removed from society. And he spends 14 years in prison. Ends up escaping, comes upon a large sum of money, and he reinvents himself as the Count of Monte Cristo. And his plan, he returns to France with his plan being to avenge himself. It's an old story, and I think there's a reason the story lives on. It's because it's so archetypal, and it's a great what would you do,
Yeah.
This is another one. I watched it with my kids, and they were just transfixed.
Oh wow, great.
Again, my daughter, she's like, don't finish it without me.
Ah,
Yeah. But no, it's beautifully shot. It's really, I mean, they spent some money on this, and it shows, but it's all the emotional beats. I mean, it's a story that again, if whether you've seen the O2 movie or read the book, I mean, you know generally how it goes. But I like how they approach the story in ways that made it feel new.
Yeah. Well, I'm not as familiar with the original text.
Okay,
just the film, and I've only seen that once or twice. So. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It being 3 hours was not an issue at all. I was, captivated by it the whole time. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like you said, you can see why it's a timeless story. I mean, you want him to get revenge,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
he's so wronged to such a degree. But then also sometimes when he's doing these things, you're also like, well, I don't know. Like,
Mm-hmm.
does this feel good?
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
yeah, and it's just interesting. I mean, I think he has more people in his orbit in this version than the version I'm familiar with, the
That's
film
right.
or most
Yeah.
familiar with, which builds out the story, makes it a little more robust. But yeah, I agree. I really enjoyed it.
The This doesn't constitute a spoiler, but I just think it's very it's beautiful. It's from the book, right? Um, the final lines of the film are all human wisdom is contained in these two words: wait and hope.
Mm.
And that's something, man. Like that's been living in my head for the since I saw the movie. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's very profound.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, but it's just terrific. Like this was on my radar, and then it showed up on Vudu in like this 3-pack with this 2-part adaptation of the Three Musketeers, also French.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, man, I watched this first, and I'm like, I'm ready to dive into those too.
I mean, if those are somehow connected with the filmmakers or something, I mean, yeah.
Well, it's Dumas, right? So I think just in
Well,
terms
sure,
of
yeah,
the but I would assume that the stylistically there's some similarities.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, but it's just terrific. I'm assuming you watched the subtitled version, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so I started watching it with subtitles, and then the version I have, there's two. There's the subtitled and the dubbed version,
Mm-hmm.
and my kids wanted to do the dubbed.
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's fine.
How? Yeah. Yeah. It's all right.
It works. I mean, I personally would always prefer to watch it the way it was intended. So subtitles are fine with me. But I think even the dubbed one it works.
Yeah. 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 I mean,
I
because then you can hear their original inflection matching
exactly.
their faces and the
Yeah.
choices they're making. But
Yeah.
sometimes you just don't have that option.
I mean, that lead actor, man, he was really a revelation for me. He was fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that the O2 movie is very good, but it also like it makes changes to sort of wrap things up in a bow in terms of the
Mm.
story,
Mm-hmm.
which to me the ending of this version feels more emotionally honest,
Mm.
and I just prefer that, because there's something very very Hollywood about how the O2 movie chooses to wrap things up,
Sure. Sure.
which is we got, without spoiling anything, but we have to like create these connections between characters and stuff, and as well, that's fine. I don't mind that, but I prefer this version in terms of sticking to the text and just feeling more honest to me.
Yeah. Well, great. I'm glad you could shine a light on that here.
I'm glad you saw it.
Yeah. Yeah. How funny.
Yeah. So, hey, we got a couple listener letters here I wanted to share with you.
All right. Let's hear them.
So here's a comment that we got. This was, I don't know if people know this, but we upload our episodes on YouTube also, and occasionally people will check out our regular shows or the commentaries on there. So somebody dipped into the archives and dropped listened to our Jaws commentary track,
Mm-hmm.
which we recorded like 5 years ago, I think.
Wow.
And they said, why do you only talk about the soundtrack, the movie itself, what it did over time, etc.? I thought we were watching this together. Watch. You just talk over all these iconic moments and don't notice them. You don't react at all to what you can see on the screen. I don't understand the purpose of this commentary track. Sorry, guys, just my 2 cents. And I want to say, first of all, thank you for your 2 cents.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what commentary tracks are, right, Brian? Like,
yeah, it's funny, and I want to say also, and I truly mean this, thank you for giving it a shot and giving your honest opinion to this person, because that was the reaction they had to it, and I really do appreciate that. I will say, I've watched some commentaries, and it is interesting. People sort of treat them differently. You know, sometimes people go scene by scene, moment by moment, like, oh, this was shot on, you know, the corner of Second and Main, and get really into the nuts and bolts of things. And sometimes it's a more general, well, here's why we hired this composer, because we're, you know, think about their work and what they would bring to this. You know, it's all over the place what people are going to do or talk about.
Yeah,
I think as they watch a film. And I've definitely had some commentaries where there's a scene coming up that I want to hear them remark on, and sometimes they do and sometimes they don't.
So they just talk right past it.
Yeah, and it's just it's the flow, whatever the flow of conversation happens to be, that's just what we wind up getting. And so I think you and I try to make our commentaries really all of those things, where we do like to get into trivia, scene specific things, but sometimes we might get into a little bit of an avenue that is really hopefully always related to the film.
Yeah,
And
but
just,
it's you know, it's a tangent occasionally.
oh yeah. But hopefully it's all like on theme or something with what we're doing. And so yeah, they come out the way that they come out, and that's just our way of doing it, I suppose. Right? You know what I mean? And like I think
that was really the reason I wanted to read this note. Is I think it's helpful to sort of put out our own mission statement about what we want to accomplish with our commentary tracks, which is exactly what you described. I mean, we're not watching the movie for the first time, and it occurred to me maybe this person was thinking it's like a reaction video, like you see on YouTube a lot. You know?
Yeah.
So you know, the shark comes out of the water, and you have people going, "Oh, damn! Did you see that?" You know?
Right.
And yeah, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah, you know. Well, and I'll also say too, yeah, I'd say they're commentary / deep dives.
There you go.
And when we started, I remember getting really nervous every time we do one, because I felt an obligation to, when it was all said and done, to have accomplished a certain thing.
Sure.
That honored the film we just watched. But then I sort of let that go, because we just found our voice with these things. Like when we do a commentary now, I kind of know what you and I are going to do. And that's me and you, I think, having a bunch of notes jotted down, but also just watching the movie and reacting to it, and then telling anecdotes related to it. And I've just
making jokes that are hopefully funny.
Yeah. And so that's where we've landed. And I'm thankful that many people seem to enjoy them. And so we'll just keep doing our thing. And if this person wants to give us another shot, I would really, you know, hope that they would find enjoyment in it now, knowing what it is, or maybe they'll find something that better suits them somewhere else. So
I hope he can find a place in his heart for the dog nobody loved. Isn't that what Homer says when he's doing the Poochie thing? Yeah?
That's right. That's right.
That's what you sounded like.
Well, how does he begin that? If I could just say something.
He's like, "Hello, Itchy. Hello, Scratchy." Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I will say, I've said this before. I don't generally go back and listen to our old shows unless it's like I need to hear something we said so that I refresh my memory. But Jaws, I have heard, and I will say, I think if you don't mind my saying, Brian and everybody, I think that's one of our better commentaries. I know you were very nervous about doing that one because it's a big movie, right? Yeah. It's a load bearing structure, you know, in cinema history. I think we nailed that one.
Yeah, I mean, my memory of it is good. I think exactly what you just said. I was not doing great work when I was putting too much pressure on myself, trying to even plot out what it should be. Yeah. I sort of learned that we need to just lean back in our chairs and enjoy what we're doing and let it happen. And hopefully people will enjoy that.
I agree. Yeah. But regardless, Jen, I agree with Brian. Thank you for leaving that comment. And yeah, if this person has made it this far, let us know what you think of some of our other ones.
Yeah.
Here's
like now they're like Steve Buscemi and Billy Madison, where they're looking at the list of people to kill, and then after hearing this, you know, they just slowly start nodding and then cross off Brian and Zachy.
As long as we get crossed off in a good way, not in a positive, not in a bad way.
Yeah.
Hey, here's a note we got from Chris Hutton via our Patreon, Brian. He says, fun fact about me, I'm one of the musicians performing Whiplash in the short film he made to secure the funding for the feature.
What?
Not on screen, but the audio. I think it's on YouTube. It's on the Blu-ray, though. That was a live recording of us, the Hank Levy Legacy Band. We then went into the studio to record an official version of the song before the feature was released. Hank was the composer of Whiplash and a legend in the world of jazz composition and arranging, as well as the head of the jazz department at Towson State University in Baltimore.
Well, wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing, Chris. I'm serious. Today, when we're done recording, I'm going to go look this up just out of curiosity and to honor you. That's amazing work.
I agree. Yeah. Here's a note we got from Jerry Kowalski, also on Patreon. And he says, thanks, Brian, for the shout out to Black Sunday. I've always really loved this underrated Robert Shaw flick, which, by the way, the novel was Thomas Harris's first novel. He later went on to write some books featuring the character Hannibal Lecter.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. See, we got all kinds of fascinating luminaries in our audience.
Yeah.
Dropping factoids left and right. Here's another note we got from John O'Brien, who's writing to us from Abu Dhabi.
Oh, wow.
And, this is another in our recurring series about people sharing their memorable movie moments.
Oh. I'm getting comfortable in my chair.
Here we go. He says, dear movie film guys, thanks as always for your great episodes and movie recommendations. Whenever I'm on a plane or have a rare free few hours to watch something, I always think, what did Brian and Zachy say was good? And you never steer me wrong.
No.
I've also really been enjoying your listeners sharing their movie watching memories, and I have a specific one I want to offer up. When I was in 9th grade, about 14 or 15, my growing up years hit a bit of a rough patch. My parents had gotten divorced a few years prior. I was starting a new high school where I really didn't fit in. Plus, I was going through all your normal run-of-the-mill teenage struggles. It was during that year that music and movies became especially important ways to escape into other worlds, imagining myself as someone different or project myself into an easier future. One particularly comforting ritual for me was whenever I was homesick from school, either from a cold or flu or maybe taking a, quote, mental health day, I would lie on the couch in our living room and pop in the VHS tape of The Princess Bride. As someone who was both a longtime comedy fan and D&D/Renaissance fair nerd, this movie always hit all the right notes for me. I'm still astounded at how it is somehow sincere and sarcastic, exciting and funny, cynical and heartwarming, fantastical and emotional, all at the same time. Being pulled into the fantasy world of Wesley, Buttercup, Inigo, Fessick, Miracle Max, and the rest allowed me to experience a time and place far from my daily struggles, but also reminded me that laughter, friendship, and love are real and really do matter. I distinctly remember how the green forested landscapes of the movie sometimes seemed to blur into the leafy trees outside the back windows of my house, and in those moments it felt like my everyday world and the movie's world of magic, fantasy, and heroism maybe weren't so far apart after all. I always felt better after a visit to that world and with those characters. Well, it's been a full 38 years since those days, and real life feels a lot more steady and fulfilling to me than it did then. But I still reach back for The Princess Bride, now on iTunes, of course, when I feel the need to refresh and recuperate. In fact, I'm writing this from my sickbed right now. Just a few days flu, it seems, and I'm sure you can guess what comfort movie I watched this morning. Thanks for all you do. Thanks for letting me share, and have fun storming the castle.
That's lovely. I can relate to that too. I really understand that feeling, and that's so special.
Just like that certain movie that you can put on and it'll just kind of transport you away.
Yeah. Really like an old friend, and a friend that's been there through the phases of your life,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's I know I can hit play and I can be transported to a world where apes have enslaved humans and hunt them for sport, and it just makes me feel good about myself.
It is funny, right? I mean, I was watching, this is no surprise, I was flipping channels and Terminator 2 was on, and I stopped on it, and I was like, why does this movie make me feel so good?
Mm-hmm.
It is funny because, yeah, it's, it's there are dire things happening in the film, but it's because it's been there through all the chapters of my life. And
Yeah.
it's more than a film to me now.
Yeah.
It's a weird sort of comfort, and it's something that's been with me through all these years. And in addition to captivating me visually and with the sounds and the music and everything. So it's just those certain movies.
Xander Berkeley getting impaled through the head is your happy place, Brian.
That's right.
I respect that.
Yeah.
I want to mention real quick, by the way, John has a book that is terrific, and I would recommend to anybody listening, called Keeping It Halal: The Everyday Lives of Muslim American Teenage Boys.
Oh, nice.
And it is a terrific read. So anybody listening to our show, please do check that out. Thank you, everybody, for your notes, though. We again, nice broken record, but we sincerely appreciate these very thoughtful, heartfelt reflections on your life experiences.
Yes, very much. Please keep them coming, and thank you for everyone who's written in. It's really meant a lot.
Hey, we got a new trailer to discuss, Brian.
Yeah.
Hey, so this year's, it's back to production capacity for Marvel. We got 3 MCU movies coming this year, including the one that's in theaters right now, which we'll discuss in a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
However, before we get to that, we got our first look at Fantastic Four: First Steps.
Yeah. That's right.
So this is, if you're keeping track, this is the 4th attempt to turn the FF into a movie.
Yeah.
Including the unreleased movie from 1994, the Tim Story movies from the mid 2000s, and then the Josh Trank one from like 10 years ago. 10 years ago, Brian. Crazy insanity.
Wow, and that was such a moment too. That film.
It really was. I can't believe that's a decade ago, though. That's wow. But regardless, we're here now. This is it's directed by Matt Shakman. And we got Pedro Pascal and Vanessa Kirby and Joseph Quinn, and of course Eben Moss-Backrack as Marvel's premier superhero team. People forget the Marvel Age of Comics began with the Fantastic Four.
See, that's the thing. Not being the Marvel head that I know, or Marvel zombie, as it were, that so many people are. I'm familiar with the Fantastic Four, but when they come up, there's just this love that I sense from everybody, or people just saying like, oh, but when they do Fantastic Four, just wait. There's so much anticipation for Marvel to get Fantastic Four right in movie form. And I'm just like, oh yeah, I kind of remember those Fox movies, 20 years ago or whatever. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what I imagine will be the closest version that everyone has been anticipating for all these years.
Yeah. Well, okay. Do we want to play some of the audio from this?
Yeah, let's do it.
T-5. Before we went up the first time, you couldn't turn invisible. Ben wasn't a rock.
The best pilot in the world right here.
Yeah. Best looking, he means.
And Johnny never caught fire.
Ben has always been a rock. Johnny is Johnny.
Hi.
And I am right here. Whatever life throws at us, we'll face it together. As a family.
Okay, so given what you just said before we played the audio, you're coming in as a relative newbie to all this.
Yeah.
Does the movie make you want to see it? Does the trailer make you want to see the movie?
Yes. And I think one of the biggest hooks for me is the fact that it's a period piece.
Okay.
Right? Because I think I was reading about Brave New World that it's the 35th MCU movie.
Amazing.
Which is wild.
35th? Wow.
I know. I didn't verify that, but it feels right.
Mm-hmm.
And so at some point you do have to shake things up a little bit, and you want to you're going to have sort of the similar beats in your films, but I want to see new things. And this to me feels like one of the biggest swings they've done in terms of new things, which is some sort of almost like Jetson-y feeling version of the 60s.
Right.
And that's really interesting to me. That I have not seen that. That feels fresh. And so that makes me excited about this.
Yeah, that is sort of the dilemma. I think, and this is obviously a conversation we're going to have in just a little bit. But how do you reflect the ethos that people know and like and have liked, um, for what are we up to, like 18 years now, 17 years?
You're right.
Jeez. While introducing new things that will bring in new viewers. Fantastic Four is an interesting one. Yeah, I'm a Fantastic Four fan, right? I don't think anybody listening is surprised by that. Um, I don't know how this is going to play. I'm very curious, right? I don't think the Marvel brand by itself is enough to bring people into the theaters anymore.
Which is crazy. I was thinking about that the other day. It makes me think of the Western, right? With our parents, and they watched Westerns, and then it for a minute became kind of, I don't know if stale is the right word, but played out maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so then you had to have the deconstruction where you got Unforgiven.
That's right.
And I was thinking how it's funny how much they sped up the timeline with the superhero genre, where they already did the deconstruction with Logan.
The deconstruction. Logan, to a lesser extent, Deadpool and Wolverine.
Right.
That's the thing, and I'm fine with it. Like, I don't think the MCU is going anywhere anytime soon. Like, unless the bottom just completely falls out.
Yeah.
Which I guess we'll find out. Like, if nobody shows up to the next Avengers movie, then at that point, probably things need to go into storage. The Fantastic Four, it has the benefit of there not having been any really great Fantastic Four movies.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think to whatever extent the fan base is invested, they're hoping that this is the one, right?
Right. I mean, well, with those previous Fox ones, what are your feelings on that as a fan of the Fantastic Four? What did they get right? What did they get wrong? Or what do you want to see done better? What's your impression? Because I'm familiar with those, so I'm curious what you feel about them and what you'd like different.
So and maybe I'm in the minority on this. I don't think those movies are horrible, the Tim Story ones. I just think they feel like they don't have a lot of ambition, right? And so within they feel, and this is going to make sense to you and maybe a few people listening, but they feel like Fox Marvel movies from the mid 2000s.
Sure. Yes.
That era, they weren't spending very much. I think the casting for the most part works. I think Chris Evans is terrific as the Human Torch. Clearly, because they brought him back. Last year in Deadpool and Wolverine.
Yeah.
I think the way the characterization of Doctor Doom was totally off, and they just felt they felt very unambitious. And I think the Fantastic Four, there's an opportunity there to really tell big scope stories about exploring all the different realms and everything, and it's stuff that the MCU has already sort of laid the track for.
Yeah. So
that's why I'm like, okay, that sounds like they're well positioned. I think the casting for this new movie looks pretty good. The retro past that it exists, and obviously that's something new for this movie, right? And so one presumes that this world will end up being destroyed, and the FF end up on MCU Earth. That to me is the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah. I guess that makes me think of Captain America 1.
Yes.
Where we get the pleasure of seeing sort of a period piece in World War II, but then we bring him to the present, which makes sense. But then there's a little part of me that doesn't want to lose. Yeah. Like having another little playground that feels different than the present.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, so all of that stuff is what I'm wondering about. I will say the effects for the Thing are freaking amazing.
Yeah, look good.
I mean, it's we've seen several incarnations of the Thing, and I'm like, well, they nailed it finally.
Yeah, and Ebon Moss Backrack, I freaking love on the bear.
Yeah, from what I've seen of him on that show, it seems like great casting.
Incredible character. I mean, I guess I've seen him occasionally in the past, but that's what really brought him to my attention. And so I'm just excited to see him in this.
It's funny. The first time I saw him was actually in the Netflix the Punisher series starring John Bernthal.
Oh, interesting.
He's one of the recurring cast members on that show.
It's funny too for people who have seen The Lake House with Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves. I saw that for the first time recently. He's in that playing Keanu Reeves's little brother.
Wow.
And it took me a second because I thought, man, I know that voice, but he almost kind of has like a pretty face.
Really?
Which is interesting, and kind of like a flop of 90s hair in front of his eyes. And it took me a second to realize who it was. And I thought, wow.
Is he one of those guys, he had to kind of age into his face a little bit?
A little bit, or to become a more distinguishing sort of personality or persona. Yeah.
It's like seeing Michael Shannon in Groundhog Day.
Yeah, exactly.
I like the, to me, the Fantastic Four. There's a great run by Mark Waid from the early 2000s where it gets into how Reed Richards, he carries this guilt, right? Like why are the Fantastic Four treated like celebrities? And this is Reed Richards trying to make amends for what he did to his friends. They went into space and the ship that they went in wasn't prepared the way it should have been, and it's his fault. So he turned his best friend into a monster, and rather than let them be treated like monsters by the world, he set it up so that they are treated like stars. And it was just it was like this moment in the comic book where Reed is putting his daughter to sleep, and he's telling her this like he has never told anybody else this. And I that's always stayed with me because I found it very poignant.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's an opportunity there to like the Tim Story movies kind of did like the sitcom hijinks, and that's fine. But there's a layer of emotion just underneath that I really want to see them try to tackle.
Yeah. That's what you just described. I feel like I sense in this trailer
a little bit, right?
Yeah.
When you've got Pedro Pascal talking to Vanessa Kirby, she's such perfect casting, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, I love her. She's beautiful. She's great. Mission Impossible. She was a highlight in Ridley Scott's Napoleon.
Oh yeah, that's right. Forgot she was in that. Yeah. So yeah, that one's coming out, I think, November.
Is this the summer one? Oh no, Thunderbolt's the summer one. Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll be talking about that one soon, I suspect.
Yep.
But I'm enthused by what we've seen so far. Also worth mentioning, we see everybody's powers demonstrated except for Reed Richards, and I found that sort of interesting. They don't want to do the Mr. Fantastic stretchy thing, maybe because it could come across as unintentionally hilarious, maybe.
Right. Wait, I'm seeing July 25th.
Oh, is that? Oh, that's right. It is. Yeah. Because it's the same. It's like a week before or after Superman.
Oh, okay.
Because we got the new Jurassic, the new Superman, and the new Fantastic Four, and those are all like 1 week apart from each other.
Wait, what do you think? We haven't talked about Jurassic. What do you think of that?
You know what? I'm an easy lay for Jurassic movies. So I can't say that the trailer like blew my socks off, but I'm like, people running from dinosaurs, sign me up.
You know what? It's funny because I am not an easy lay with the Jurassic sequels. I think Jurassic World is perfectly fine, and it's enjoyable.
Well, we'll be revisiting that one this year for a commentary track. So,
oh wow, I can't believe we haven't done it.
10 years later.
You know why I felt like we had? Because I think we just talked about it, period, like as a review.
That's right.
But no, the sequels I liked less and less. But with this trailer, I have to say, I'm glad that it's not. How many? I know it's in the title, or no, I don't know what the title is. I was going to say like
World Rebirth.
Okay, there you go. I was going to say, the park thing might be a little played out at this point. And so really, let's just lean into the people versus dinosaurs. And I liked the sort of old-fashioned adventure-y fun that the trailer gives off.
And there's kind of more of a leaning into horror vibes, or maybe not horror, like scary vibes.
Yeah, that, and I don't know, it just feels like, from the Scarlett Johansson character, you almost get sort of a swashbuckler sort of feel, and the music is very old-fashioned sounding, like a lot of horns,
Yeah.
kind of. And I thought, yeah, that's what I want to see, an old school, old-fashioned adventure
Yeah.
kind of a feeling, and something that doesn't take itself super seriously, and it's just people versus dinosaurs, and that's appealing to me. So I'm optimistic.
I think I've said this before. Like when it comes to Jurassic, the first movie is like the Shining City on the Hill.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I'm like, we're never gonna get back to that.
No.
And I'm just sort of sanguine about that. So that's I'm like, you know what? I know what I'm expecting out of any of these, and what I'm expecting is it's not going to be like that first movie, and I'm fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's helped me anyway. You know,
I think that is helpful. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And I will say, and I've said this on the show before, the third of the previous trilogy, the Jurassic World Dominion, the version that was in theaters was I was like, it was fine. I think the extended version, which is the preferred cut from Controverro, is demonstrably better. Like I think I mean it's not going to like change your opinion of the movie, but I think it is a better version of that movie. Like that is the one that should have been in theaters.
I am curious what the story is.
Yeah. You know, there's about 20 minutes or so of footage that ended up getting cut. And it's stupid stuff because the movie ended up making $1 billion.
Right.
And I'm like, Universal, you guys would have made that $1 billion. Even
Yeah.
if it was slightly longer, you know. So
yeah,
I don't know the thought process there.
Yeah, I don't know that I ever connected with those characters. I think that was a big problem also.
I agree with that. I think that's why I liked the third one so much, is because it was about the originals.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, give me more Alan Grant and Ian Malcolm and all that, you know.
Yeah.
But anyway, all that stuff's coming out next summer, so we'll be having some conversations then.
Can't wait.
Meanwhile, hey, there's a new MCU movie in the theaters right now.
What?
Yeah, and you know who's back, Brian?
Who's that, Zachy?
Why, it's Captain America now in Sam Wilson flavor.
Yeah, all right.
So you may recall that at the end of Avengers Endgame, sorry, spoiler alert, but an aged Steve Rogers handed the shield to Sam Wilson and said, "Hey, this is your thing now."
Mm-hmm.
And then there was that TV series on Disney Plus called Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yep. That
tracked, you know, Sam's journey towards embracing the shield.
Right.
And that's where this movie picks up. He's now fully ensconced in his role as the Captain America of record.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, now we have Harrison Ford stepping into the role of Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross.
Yeah.
The President of the United States. So this movie just opened last night.
Yep.
As we are recording this, it's already on track for. It made $12 million on its opening day.
All right. Encouraging.
They're saying potentially something in the mid 90s for the 4-day weekend. And we have not discussed our reactions to this movie.
No.
Yeah. This is ominous.
I know. I'm so curious.
It's actually, this is something you and I were talking about before we got on. I had this experience, and you had something similar, where I mentioned in my classes, "Hey, you guys excited for the new Captain America?" And it was a lot of, maybe I'll watch it eventually.
Yeah, and I told you that I could not get anyone to go with me.
So you went by yourself.
I went by myself. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and we should also say that in this moment, reactions have not been super positive.
Yeah. See, I didn't even know that, to be honest, because I didn't even look at Rotten Tomatoes until after.
Yeah, and well, I'd sort of been noting a lot of people's, they put out first
like
reactions,
reaction posts. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously the production of this seems like it was pretty complicated. A lot of extensive reshoots and things like that. So
there's a piece in New York Magazine that just feels like somebody's really pissed off and just wants to just tear a switch off on this movie.
I think, the crew member, is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
I thought that was a little talking out of school. Yeah.
I thought so too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll say honestly, I went into this one not expecting the Winter Soldier certainly not expecting Endgame. I was like, I just want an engrossing episode of the MCU.
Mm-hmm.
And look, I like the movie. I'll just say it, I don't think it's like my fourth favorite Captain America movie, but I liked it better than the fourth Thor movie.
Mm-hmm.
And as an MCU entry, it checked the boxes for me. I thought Anthony Mackie holds the center well. I thought Harrison Ford was terrific in this movie.
Yeah, I didn't realize he would play such a big role. I mean, he's
I didn't realize
a
that
main
either.
character in this, which makes sense why you would get Harrison Ford to do this.
That's right. Yeah. I thought he did a good job. I thought there were some bits and pieces that didn't fully come together for me, but on balance, when the movie ended, I like where it left the character, and I didn't find it unsatisfying as a one and done. I actually kind of prefer. It feels to me like a phase, 2 Marvel movie, where it's just like here's an adventure of this character, and I like the characters.
You know what, Zachy? That's funny because I thought it was flawed, noticeably flawed.
Yeah,
but fine.
You can see the stitches.
Oh yeah. But yeah. I was like, this is fine. Like I actually thought this is going to be. I've had this unique experience with you where, like Iron Man 2 or something comes out, or even 3, and people are like, right. Because that's the movie of the moment, and we're looking at it really harshly, or we're like, it's under close examination. Does this thing live up to all the others? And it's like, well, maybe it doesn't. But then when you have 35 movies on the shelf and you go back and you watch Iron Man 2 or 3, you're less harsh on it.
Yeah.
And you think, well, it's just, it's kind of a fun adventure that I haven't seen as many times with Iron Man in it. I mean, that's been my experience when we've done those commentaries and gone back. And I had the feeling that that's what people are going to feel about this movie.
I absolutely agree with that because they're setting certain stuff up here, which we'll talk about after the spoilers, I guess, that it's like, well, obviously that's going to become a thing later, but I appreciated that none of the, hey, that's going to matter later diminished from whatever they were trying to accomplish here in terms of just, here's the story.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it comes down to how willing people are to accept Anthony Mackie as Captain America.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I get it. Chris Evans casts a very big shadow, right?
Yeah.
But you say, okay, well, he's not around. So what story are we telling? And we say, well, here's a Captain America who's, Steve's whole thing, we just watched Winter Soldier, right? Is, does what I represented matter anymore?
Mm-hmm.
And that was the angst that drove him.
Right.
And with this movie, it's, can I live up to everything Steve represented? Well, that's great for me. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I think Anthony Mackie is just a really charismatic, charming presence. I was fully invested in all the stuff. I think he makes the laugh lines work, but I think he makes the dramatic stuff work.
Yeah, and if I can give like a positive for the movie, I really enjoyed the first act a lot. I was sort of like, what does everyone not like here? Like it's a really interesting entry point to this story. It's a really interesting setup. It's amazing timing that I watched the Manchurian Candidate for the first time recently.
Right. Yeah. Right. That's funny.
Because this is basically an homage to that.
Yeah.
Which is really creepy. And I think still feels palpable, the whole notion of that sort of thing. Someone being brainwashed into doing something they don't want to do, and what a threat they are, that they don't even realize that they're a threat. And then, as the story goes along, I think it feels a little, every now and then, just like it's off, its step is off a little bit.
Yeah.
Or something, or it doesn't flow. We were talking about during the Winter Soldier commentary that they had an extra amount of time with the script. And you can feel that everything in that is working in perfect concert, right? The characters, the emotions, the action, the plotting, all of that feels very well realized. And I think this one feels a little bit more hasty in its plotting and trying to make everything feel like,
which is weird considering they basically had an extra year to put the movie together, because it was supposed to come out a year ago.
Well, see, and it's funny that, and obviously they insert it with the reshoots, and this is stuff sometimes I'm loath to mark against it because that's just the only thing that really should matter is what we're looking at.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I am curious what the original story was.
Well, considering that Giancarlo Esposito was inserted in the reshoots,
yeah,
that's bananas to me.
yeah,
Because he's fairly integral,
yeah. I don't know. I mean, I can't help but think about it, but I also don't want to. I want to think about what it is that we actually watched in the theater, and yeah, I think even during some of the action, I felt like this is like a couple degrees off or something. And it's a little unfair because we just rewatched one of the best Marvel movies, period.
Right.
And it can't measure up to that one, unfortunately. But trying to set that aside a little bit, acknowledging that, but trying to set that aside a little bit. Like I thought this was an interesting plot. I mean, we're dealing with the aftermath of Eternals, and there's this new mineral, and everybody's got the treaties about it and the complications with that, with the nations and with Ross as president and what's going on with him. There's something weird. Why is he taking these pills? And like, it's just, there's intrigue, and I was interested in the story the whole time. I just feel like its execution didn't feel as like it had the same finesse or sophistication as the better Marvel movies, but it also held my attention the whole time. And by the end, I was like, all right. Like I said, I think this is one that when people go back and it's one they pull off the shelf because they haven't seen it as many times, that they're not going to be as hard on.
I definitely think that. And I also, I mean, acknowledging the flaws, I think the second act culminates in like a aerial battle sequence,
Mm-hmm.
And I found that the least involving part of the movie. And I think part of it is like, I just can't get into like the Falcon and his buddy, or Captain America and the Falcon flying around and doing, like, that's not as interesting to me as like Captain America doing hand-to-hand combat and stuff.
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
But but I guess the point I make is I'm glad that wasn't the climax of the movie.
Yes.
Because I think the third act worked really well for me.
Yeah, and there's a we've been here before a little bit, but there's like a nice tension between being a superhero and dealing with your government. Like, what do you work with them? Are you kind of like rogue?
Yeah.
Like, what is that like? And when the president wants to work with you, then are you beholden to every sort of gray area that he wants you to handle for him? And that's interesting, I think.
Yeah.
I agree with you. The aerial stuff, I don't know. It's funny because on paper, what's happening there, I think there's a great tension, right? Story-wise, what they're up against.
Right.
I don't know that I felt that to the degree I would have liked. It just sort of became a little bit of a rote.
Yeah, and I wonder if there's a couple of things. I think that there is sort of a sameness to MCU effect sequences that puts me at arm's length a little bit.
I definitely agree with that. Especially when it comes to the more heightened fantastical stuff.
Right. Like there's a reason that, again, we're going to keep banging this drum. Winter Soldier, man, that movie just sings. And part of it is because they limit how much of it is the overtly fantastical, and they found a way to even make the Falcon effects seem, somewhat relatable.
Completely agree. And I just want to say, and the hand-to-hand in Winter Soldier is top notch.
Yeah.
Watching the shield and how he employs it and everything is really cool.
Yeah, and that's why I think in this movie, two of the best sequences in terms of action are in the beginning when you've got, the Falcon is just fighting a dude, and it's meant to be kind of like when Steve Rogers fights Batroc, in the Winter Soldier. That's well done. And then when he's fighting Giancarlo Esposito later in the movie.
Yes. Yeah.
And because it's stuff you can relate to, it feels a little bit more Tom Clancy adjacent,
Yeah, agreed.
But again, for me, it all comes down to the characters, and are we interested in the journeys that they're going through? And I think the way they incorporated the Isaiah Bradley character, who terrific Carl Lumbly performance there.
Yes.
It really gives an emotional base to everything that Sam's dealing with. I honestly I love the relationship with Danny Ramirez as Joaquin Torres.
Yeah, he's interesting. At first, I thought he was going to annoy me.
Right.
But he gets. By the way, where were they in that sort of room with like a? Big
I was wondering that. I was like, where is this?
Yeah, it sort of was like it reminded me of like the Bat Lair sort of thing, where you have
it's
your
the
own
Cap
symbol
Cave.
everywhere. Yeah, the Cap Cave, exactly. Which,
I was
by the
literally.
way, oh yeah, no, good.
I was like, is this in a government facility? Like, where yeah.
Yeah, but no, their thing as it went along, I thought got better.
Yeah, well, and it for me. I was like, well, obviously, there's going to be this element of should Sam allow this guy to be out there doing this?
Yeah.
And so I was appreciative of how that all played out. But again, look, the ultimately you've got Sam and you have President Ross, and again, Harrison Ford did not just walk through this thing.
No, he showed up.
He showed up.
Yep.
And it's a great performance from him,
I agreed. It's a good character. He has a good arc.
Yeah.
In this movie, I've seen a lot of people say that he has a stronger arc than Sam, which is kind of an issue when your movie is called Captain America. And I mean, I guess yes, he does have the stronger, more potent arc, I think.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed watching it, and the relationship with his daughter, and clearly he's harboring some sort of secret that we're gonna see get uncovered along the way. And
yeah, well, do we want to talk spoilers?
Yeah, let's do it.
Spoilers.
So, two thoughts actually. Number one, doesn't Thaddeus Ross sound like another name for Harrison Ford? Like, it's weird how those names kind of match up.
The syllables, yeah.
Yeah, I just had that thought.
That's funny.
I was wondering, because this is the character, of course, who was played by William Hurt previously, right? And one presumes this would have been William Hurt had he lived, right? But clearly, the character is important enough that they did decide to recast it, and it's to me, I was like, man, Ford just like stepped right into it,
Yeah.
He didn't miss a beat. But the thought I have is, man, I wish the Red Hulk was not all over the marketing for this thing.
It would have been a really awesome surprise,
right,
at the end, because he's taking these pills. We don't know what's going on. He's acting occasionally slightly erratic.
Mm-hmm.
If we didn't know that he was going to turn into a Hulk, that would have been amazing.
Yeah.
Now,
that said, the Hulk effect looked great.
I gotta say, I've said before with the trailer, that was where I started to lose interest. I enjoyed the sort of 90s Clancy vibes of the trailer, but when it became like Hulk fighting, I was like, ugh. No, he looks pretty good.
He did.
He looks like Harrison Ford as a Hulk. I mean, props to the visual effects people.
And it's not like funny, that was my worry. I was like, are we going to be like, well, that's Harrison Ford as a Hulk? That looks weird. No, it worked. I think that and actually I'll come back to the thought I was making, but like we were talking about with Cobra Kai and the Karate Kid, where it's like every part, it's all part of the mythology. And it's all useful. Well, to me, that's like this movie and The Incredible Hulk from 2008.
Yeah.
Because they're like, Tim Blake Nelson, here he is. Liv Tyler, here she is. I'm like, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for acknowledging this movie that feels like I'm one of the few people who likes,
Yeah. Shout out to Louis Leterrier.
That's right. Yeah. Your friend Louis Leterrier, you should say. I think that that's been a complaint that this is just a sequel to The Incredible Hulk instead of taking things forward. And I'm like, I have a problem with that critique, because I'm like, well, you're using stuff in the mythos to take the story forward. I don't see the problem, because I don't think knowledge of that movie is required to make this one work.
You know what? I'm going to agree with you. I'm also going to say I do feel like if they had had more time with the script and it hadn't been as probably desperately pieced together as it was, I
Yeah.
do think they could have gone in a little deeper with Sam.
Sure.
Just his feelings and his character and relationships and whatnot. I actually liked his kind of relationship with the Secret Service woman.
Yeah.
That was kind of interesting, and that soldier. I wouldn't have minded some more texture and moments with his interiority a little bit.
Yeah.
That said, though, I completely agree. Who cares? I mean, this is a 35 movie story.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that this exists in this world and it's come back, and this is what Cap is dealing with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would have liked a little more of the leader, played by Tim Blake Nelson.
Yeah.
Because I think Tim Blake Nelson is just a really interesting actor, right? And
Totally.
I'm somebody, when I watched The Incredible Hulk in 2008, I was like, man, I can't wait to see him come back as the leader.
Yeah.
Almost 20 years later, you know.
Yeah.
And I think the movie does the work so that you're not completely lost.
Yeah.
But I think getting a better sense of what his abilities are would have been nice, you know.
I actually wrote that down. I think his skill set is completely underutilized. I mean, if he's a brilliant tactician, you want to see that scene where he's working out the probabilities.
Yes.
Or having that moment where it's like, now let's go back to The Princess Bride, where it's like with the poison, you know, like, well, clearly if I do this, you think I'm going to go out this door, but that's why I'm not going to do this, but I'm going to make you think this, which is going to make you react that way. Like that's, or even going all the way back to Companion, where I said the script set up rules and conceits and it mines all of them, you know, to the nth degree, which is very, very satisfying to see, because only your movie can offer the things, you know, that you've set up, like, you know, the fun, the most amount of fun out of the things that you've set up.
Yes.
I don't feel like they accomplished that with this character, unfortunately.
I agree. Well, 2 points. I think that his brain needed to be more horrifically big.
Really?
And it was pretty horrific looking already.
It's pretty gross, but
it needed to be bigger to me.
Yeah.
To show that because that was the mutation that happened to him.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Right. Like in the comic books, the leader has an exaggerated cranium. It's just bigger.
And
that's the idea, is that the gamma rays affect everybody differently. So it made Bruce Banner, freakishly strong. It made Sam Stearns freakishly intelligent.
Right.
And that's why he's the Hulk's arch nemesis.
Right.
There is one other, this is like a very nerdy comic book complaint, so just indulge me. When that soldier friend of Sam's who you mentioned, and the leader shows up and he kills him, right?
Yeah.
And he says, "Who are you?" And he says, "I am." And I was like, "Say your leader. Say your leader." And he says, "The hero." I was like, "Damn it."
Yeah, I thought that was kind of underwhelming, or
right?
Like I missed the reason that was impactful.
Yeah, I think that something got cut in the edits that would have made that right. But I'm like, I want the supervillains to say their effing name.
Yeah.
I like it when Patrick Wilson calls himself Ocean Master. God damn it.
Yeah. Sure.
They did the same thing in The Incredible Hulk, right? Where Tim Roth is he's the Abomination, but they can't call him the Abomination because that's comic booky. So you have Tim Blake Nelson says to him, "Look, if I do this to you, it could end up becoming an abomination." Okay, all right, well, I'll take that. I'll take my half a loaf, But that's like a small critique. But I wanted a little bit more of the villain, and I think partly because I really like Tim Blake Nelson as an actor, and I'm like, really give him something to chew on,
Well, I mean, you can't help but talk about these things, but apparently large chunks of this movie were replaced.
Oh, really? Okay.
Including action sequences, big action sequences.
Huh.
So maybe he was had a bigger presence and was used differently, but this is where we wound up. I don't know.
Well, so this is a conversation that needs to be had, because if this movie ends up being a success, it may end up being a success just barely by the skin of its teeth, And so, I think the Marvel folks need to sit down a little bit and think about their approach to the assembly line.
Mm-hmm.
Um, James Gunn talked about making Guardians 3, and he said, he knew every single shot that was going to go into that movie before they called action, right? And it feels like the general approach with the MCU movies, notwithstanding your James Gunn's, is they bring on these directors like Julius Ona, who's more from an indie sensibility, and they're kind of like, look, you point the camera at the actors, we'll make the action sequences in our computer, and then we'll just sew them together.
Right.
And I think that has to stop.
I agree. And I also think you said earlier that we're back to 3 movies a year.
Yeah.
Let's do 2.
Let's do 2. I agree.
And that's fine. You know, and let's just give them the time they need to incubate and become their best selves.
Well, the other thought I had is I think that, and this is probably going to be borne out or has been borne out, I think the Disney Plus series on balance have been a mistake.
Yeah.
And part of that, I think what you realize is the initial intention was, hey, we're going to make these shows that are going to look just like the movies.
Mm-hmm.
And what's ended up happening is you have a bunch of movies that look just like the shows.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. The scarcity isn't there, and you're sort of devaluing a lot of these IPs, and I think that's borne out by, like, nobody watched the Marvels.
Yeah.
When it was in theaters, and I think you and I agreed it was a perfectly cromulent movie.
Yeah. No, I remember. Yeah, I liked it more than most, but it was like good mid-tier.
Good mid, right?
Yeah.
But I think it would have been more valued if people didn't know. Well, it's just like all that other stuff on Disney Plus. I'll just wait 8 weeks.
Yeah.
Right. I think to some extent this has the same problem.
Yeah.
But I think to your point, look, once you drop adamantium into the mix that's not going to go undeveloped later.
Mm-hmm.
So this becomes a fairly important piece of that larger tapestry.
Yeah.
So you say whatever the MCU version of Wolverine looks like, it starts here.
Right.
The other thing I wanted to mention was the Bucky cameo.
Yes.
So I went in to this. I was like, either Steve or Bucky is going to show up in this, and it's going to be a surprise.
Wait, before we get to what actually happened, where is Steve in this moment? I mean, is he aging as an old man?
That's the thing, right? So he's like a 90-year-old guy or whatever.
Okay.
Just living his life, I guess.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they have very deliberately avoided saying anything about Steve.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you why, because he's going to show up in one of these 2 Avengers movies.
Right.
And if I were to guess, and let's see how well this ages, I think he will end up getting de-aged.
Uh-huh.
And we're going to see both Captain Americas on screen together. That's my prediction.
Yeah. I mean, because you saying that just it made me like a little giddy inside.
Yeah, exactly.
So they gotta.
I think I believe the comic books right now, and I don't follow the books anymore, but I believe you have 2 different Captain America comics. You have Steve Rogers Captain America, Sam Wilson Captain America.
Mm-hmm.
So if I were to guess, that's where the MCU is going to take us.
Do you think, all right, I want to see if this ages, we're going to see them side by side. We're going to get that theater roar of applause.
Mm-hmm.
And then, Steve's going to go, or Sam's going to go, Captain. And then Steve's going to go, Captain. You know what I mean? And then they're going to like put up their shields and go fight.
Hey, right? Yeah. Or Steve's going to say something like Sam's going to say something and Steve's going to go, you heard the captain.
Yes, totally.
Right?
One of those. Definitely.
Let's see what happens. I wouldn't be surprised, but all of that notwithstanding, there is, I'm not over the moon about this movie. I thought it was I found it enjoyable as an episode. There is this weird sharks in the water tone to the media coverage.
Yeah.
Which I find a little off-putting because I'm like, I don't know, guys. I mean, there isn't enough here to hate on that much,
See, that's the thing. And I've read it and I was like, noted. Right. I don't mind that it was there a little bit, but then it started to feel a little excessive.
Yes.
Like
that was my sense with that New York article.
Yeah. Like kind of licking their lips, ready to
exactly
to take this thing down for some reason, like almost like it's personal.
Exactly.
And I'm with you. Like I would call this mid. But if you're in the mood for it, like there's things to enjoy here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think people can take that and decide if they want to wait for Disney Plus or if they're like, you know what, I got a free Saturday night. Like, yeah, let's go watch a Marvel movie.
I agree. I should say I went with Mikhail and Idris, right? And both of them liked it.
Yeah.
Mikhail made an observation, which I agree with, that Sam's suit is just too overpowered.
Oh, dude. I mean, that's the thing. They bring up a couple times the fact that he hasn't taken the serum, Sam.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're like, maybe we should do that so I stop thinking about it. Because he would be dead so many times over. I don't care how much vibranium that suit has. I mean, him fighting the Hulk is like, he's having like concrete pillars fall on his head.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
I don't like that purple force field thing.
Yeah, sure.
It drove me nuts when T'Challa was doing it. So I like it even less now. And I hate Presto Changeo helmets that appear and disappear.
Dude, when it first happened, I think in the first act, I literally thought of you, knew we would talk about it. I don't love it. I even thought, like, what if he opened his mouth or turned his head? Would it like go into his skull? Like, how do these things work?
Honestly, even if you just do a little CGI thing that shows it just like retract into a device in his collar or something.
That's what I'm saying. Even if it's just unfolds.
Yes, exactly.
Metal pieces like ching chong 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 like come out. Like
exactly.
I'm fine with that.
Right. Like we're not setting a very high bar, but the bloop, bloop, oh, drives me nuts.
Yeah. I'm so glad we're on the same page with that.
But yeah, and I did enjoy seeing Liv Tyler back, however briefly her little appearance was. I like that Ross is now locked up in the same prison that he locked up Sam Wilson in. In Civil War, so there's some symmetry there.
Yeah. That's the thing. I guess my takeaway I keep thinking when we're talking about it is all the beats on paper really kind of work for me. I mean, it's not a bad story. I think there's just, it was missing a little finesse and feeling like it was threaded together as well as it could be. But it's an interesting him versus the president, and the president is an interesting character in this movie. And villain, underserved, unfortunately. Oh, you know what I want to call out also? I noticed a couple times was the score.
Yes.
Laura Karpman, who I'm not familiar with, but
no, me either.
The first scene opens up, and occasionally throughout the movie, it has this nervous, squirrely sound, like a full orchestra, sort of paranoid. It reminded me of 90s thrillers in a way, and I appreciated that as an homage, and it felt like a full orchestra again, which I don't think movies have done in a while. So with this and Wolfman recently, which I remember also calling out, had this lush orchestral score at the end, even though we didn't feel like the movie earned that ending. I mean, it did sound beautiful.
It did.
And if we're returning to that, call me a happy camper.
I'm all about those big orchestral scores. Yeah. So that's kind of where we landed with the Captain America Brave New World. Any other thoughts that we haven't gotten to yet?
Yes, the post-credits scene.
Yes.
What were your thoughts?
I saw a thing online and it made me laugh. This is somebody posted this on Reddit or on social media like 2 years ago, and they said, all I want is for MCU movies to be self-contained, but for them to connect to each other, but also they shouldn't reference each other at all. And they should feel like they're leading to something, but at the same time, not everything needs to be built up. Is that too much to ask?
That's funny.
And I feel like if you could take that tweet and turn it into like 2 minutes of footage, it's the end credits of this movie.
Oh, brilliant. That's literally what that felt like.
Right.
Yeah, and they did it, and okay, they did it.
This was, look, I don't really care because it's like, well, I know the stuff that's coming next, but you talk about an utterly disposable post-credit scene. Like, you didn't need it at all. You could have just not had one.
No, nothing is accomplished.
Right.
Well, I have Sam talking to the leader,
Yeah.
And the leader is saying like, "Oh, you don't even know what's coming," basically implying threats from another world. And I was like, "Yeah, we've done that. Like
That's right.
we've been there. Like I've
Twice.
seen it. Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. It's not specific enough to imply something that feels new to me.
Yeah, well, he says something. He's alludes to the multiverse in some way,
Right.
but I think the consensus is we're kind of multiversed out,
Yeah.
which is a problem because the next two Avengers movies are specifically multiverse centric. You know.
Which, I mean, I was feeling a little multiversed out when No Way Home and Everything Everywhere All at Once came out, but
Yeah.
those are great stories,
That's right.
right? Great characters. So, I mean, if they can come up with a good enough story employing that, I'm fine with it.
I'm fine. The post credit scene felt like an obligation rather than something essential.
Definitely.
So as I texted you as I was walking out, I was like, "There's one post credit scene. It's at the very end," and I would imagine you were kind of like, "Because that means like 10 minutes. You got to sit there now, you know."
But that's when I texted you and I was like, "Hey, they thanked Ralph Macchio. What's that about?" And then you're like, "Well, Ralph Macchio," and you looked him up, and it's a different Ralph Macchio who's been associated with Marvel Comics for a long time.
That's right. I was like Alice Cooper in Wayne's World. I was like, "Well, Brian, as a matter of fact, Ralph Macchio's an editor."
And I was genuinely like, "Well, I'm happy to learn about him."
Yeah, yeah. I think he has a cameo in the first Thor movie, also. Yeah. Oh, and what other thought? I was talking about the Bucky cameo. Two things, actually. First of all, I got up to use the restroom. This is the sequence where Torres is in the hospital and Sam is watching. I'm like, okay, bathroom time. I get up. And then you hear the door open and Sam's like, "There's a private room." And I was standing to the side. I was like, "Nope, that's going to be somebody."
You're right.
I'm glad I stuck around. Second, so Bucky's running for Congress?
I wouldn't, maybe about 10 years ago, I would have thought impossible.
Yeah. A Russian agent in government, you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was like, that's a weird thing to just kind of drop in there, right? Like, maybe that's relevant to the Thunderbolts, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah. And he's responsible for like all the major assassinations of the past 50, 60 years, but he's got my vote.
I mean, maybe it's like, hey, all the shit I've done,
Right.
But I just thought that was a choice,
Yeah.
But you know what? The movie ended, and notwithstanding the post credit scene, I was like, I am looking forward to the Thunderbolts in a few months.
Yeah, I gotta be honest. I think the humor
I like the newest
pushing...
trailer that they just dropped during the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm like, I'll show up, and this seems to be my attitude lately with a lot of these movies. Is like,
I think that's most people.
Yeah, but then when I watch it, I'm like, oh well, no, that wasn't that bad. But something about the humor is really pushing me away. Where I'm sort of
sure.
A bunch of people who are just over it, man. They can't even stand each other, dude. I just, it's not playing for me, but I'm hoping that once I watch the movie itself, I will get swept up in it.
I just want the scene with Will Smith being like, "So what are we? Just some kind of a Thunderbolts asterisk?"
Asterisk, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
It looks like what's his face? God damn it. Sheriff Hopper. What's his name?
Yeah. Oh,
David
Harbour.
David Harbour. He looks like he had an absolute blast making that movie.
Yes, definitely.
And I want to reward his enthusiasm.
That's fine. Yeah.
But that's a conversation we'll be having in a few months.
Yeah. Yep.
So we shall see. But hey, those of you listening, what did you think of Captain America: Brave New World? Let us know your thoughts. You can email us at moviefilmpodcast@gmail.com. You can also hit like on our Facebook page, facebook.com/moviefilmpodcast. If you like what we're doing, please go to Apple Podcasts and leave a review, leave a star rating. Every little bit helps. We also have a Patreon page, Brian.
That's right. If you head over to patreon.com/moviefilmpodcast and subscribe for only $5 a month, you'll find every commentary we've ever done and receive every episode and commentary moving forward absolutely ad-free. We're very thankful for our sponsors, but we've been made aware that there are a lot more interruptions than there used to be. So we set up the Patreon as a way of providing an ad-free alternative that hopefully offers the most satisfying way to enjoy our show. Plus, your subscription will also go a long way in helping to support us and helping to sustain producing the show. So if you're interested and able, please head over to patreon.com/moviefilmpodcast and subscribe. We'd be very grateful.
We certainly would. And if you're looking for me online, you can find me on social media at Zacky's Corner. That's ZAKIS Corner. You can also read my reviews at the San Francisco Chronicle and the Wrap and IGN. I have my review of the final season of Cobra Kai at the Wrap, so you can check that out. Brian, what about you?
As always, episodes I've written of Puppy Dog Pals and Young Jedi Adventures are available to stream on Disney+.
There you go. With that, on behalf of my partner Brian Hall, my name is Zachy Hassan. This has been Movie Film 310. We will catch you next time. Thanks, folks.
Welcome, friends, it's the Movie Film Podcast. Movie Film Podcast, enjoy the show. Zachy and